I'll just put my timer so I won't talk too much. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for the invitation. Although I must admit I hesitated when I was asked to give this talk for a specific reason. As a psychologist, as a career researcher, I spend much of my time and I focus on some very vulnerable, marginalized populations who have great difficulties in their transition or are at risk of being excluded from the labor market. So I may sound a little bit alarming or depressing sometimes. However, I will try to behave during my presentation, not ruin your afternoon, and try to present both sides of the coin, both sides of this transition. On one hand, I'll keep in mind that this transition is the beginning of an exciting journey that holds many promises and opportunities, and that your youth, your enthusiasm, your level of expertise are the best ingredients for your success in this transition. At the same time, I'll talk a little bit about the challenges, the stress involved, the risks there are, because otherwise I would be minimizing your concerns or your efforts in the transition. So let's move on to maybe what we know about modern careers, today's careers, contemporary careers. Well, at least since the 1990s, scholars in the field of career development research point to a sort of a change in the forms of careers, a shift from, let's say, more traditional, linear career progressions where you knew that there were stages, steps that were structured and that you could predict, going from education to career, having a career progression, and then comes retirement, to new forms of careers that are less linear, less predictable, more uncertainty, and marked by more transitions, periods of change, getting out of employment, getting into unemployment, and back again, moving from worker to student, then back again to the world of work. And some of these transitions can be quite challenging, disruptive, a great change. And among these transitions, we know that the school-to-work transition is a particular one. It is not recognized as being trivial, automatic. It takes a lot of effort. It is critical because there's not only the vocational tasks you're dealing with in terms of decision-making, in terms of adapting to new roles, new demands, but also for most of you maybe, you're transitioning towards adulthood, so there's this great developmental task also, and also you will be forming a new social identity as workers rather than students. It is central because we know that early career success does predict long-term career success. So some of what's going on in this first transition can have long-term impact on stable employment, on career progression in time. And also what's different here is that in our societies, we tend to put a lot of accent on individual responsibilities. Everyone should take charge of their career development, develop skills, make choices, cope with the challenges. But as you know, it's not only an individual decision, the context does matter. So in this period, we can feel a little bit alone or lonely. How do we try to understand this specific transition? I call it the mother of all transitions. There's an expression in French, la mère de toutes les batailles, that suits this. It's a particular transition. Well, as career researchers, we tend to look at the antecedents, which predictors influence the success of the school-to-work transition. How can we define this successful transition? And then what are the outcomes or results that are visible? In terms of individual factors, we know that, of course, education level, the type of education, the level of education, skills, capacities, knowledge, know-how, all these are ingredients, all these predict the success of transition. It seems very intuitive. But unfortunately, depending on the level of inequalities, possible discriminations, structural barriers in a given society, the mere fact of being a man or a woman, of having a particular social origin, having a particular immigration background, also affects this, and I'll say a little bit more about these inequalities. How do we try to define successful transition? Mainly, in my field of work, we take two types of indicators. Of course, objectively, this transition should lead to employment. So employability, which is the capacity to obtain employment and to keep it, to maintain employment, is of course a factor of success. But also subjectively, we take a look at how people are satisfied with the fit between their job, actual job, their job contents, and what they can do, what they want to do, their life goals, their values, their objectives. So the fit is also a way to see or to indicate a successful transition. And then comes the future career development. A positive career development is supposed to lead to, of course, objectively decent working conditions, a good salary, good working hours, which allow for life-work balance, social rights of workers, and job security. These are the objectively decent working conditions, but also subjectively, people who are satisfied with their career progression are those who report some sort of meaning they find in their work, a sense of purpose, the fact that they feel that their work contributes to others than themselves. Context, I will talk about it in the slides to come. It does count, it does matter. I took two types of variables we consider here. First of all, how well the education system prepares individuals for this transition and how it supports them through this period is a great influence. I think the event here shows one such support, bringing people together, trying to help you do your networking and find options, etc. But of course also labor market conditions, the limitations or the opportunities on the labor market do affect, moderate this relationship. And then, not to be too deterministic, this is our job as psychologists. We know that people are able to develop resources, skills to overcome their own vulnerabilities. So in this term, some psychological or psychosocial resources are important. We can see, based on our work, that people who are self-determined enough, that is, have a clear view of their objectives, their life and work goals, are those who are most engaged, active or proactive and succeed in the transition. But not only self-determination does the job, people need to be a little bit flexible to review their goals, to change their plans, and to adapt and adjust to new events or new demands. I will come back in the two slides to come on the context. I'll put the focus on this and also some of these psychosocial resources. Let's talk about the context. I'll take the Swiss context as an example. What do we know about it? Again, two sides to the coin. It depends which indicators you are taking into account to know the Swiss socioeconomic context. If you take objective indicators, macroeconomic indicators, the picture is really bright. Swiss economy is very prosperous, one of the highest GDPs in the world, and very competitive. It draws on innovation to adapt to technological progress and remain competitive. The labor market is particularly stable and resilient. A pretty low unemployment rate, but most of all, this unemployment rate resists well external fluctuations in terms of economic recessions, crisis, or even the recent pandemic period. And a lot of this good health is attributed to a high quality, a very performing education system. Other side of the coin, when you take into account subjective indicators, when you ask people how they're living their everyday work, things are a little less bright. Our research in the last 20 years show that there's a rise of stress and strain, that demands are rising, also increasing work demands. Swiss workers work many hours, have to deal with tight deadlines, so the rhythm is accelerating. And also the other thing that is going on is that to have the same options on the labor market to ensure and secure their employment, people need higher prior levels of education when entering the labor market, and they need to engage in lifelong learning and continuous training. The first degree does not suffice to have harmonious progression, and there are some sorts of inequalities. Maybe I'll tell you a little bit about this. But what does data tell us about this context and how people maintain their career or progress through their career in Switzerland? To answer this question, we were able to, in a recent study, to follow a representative group sample of Swiss workers through 7 years of their career progression, 2012 to 2018. And every year we asked them about their employment status, they're working or not, at what rate. And we also assessed different characteristics, sociodemographics, skill level, education level, but also some psychological resources and attributes. And then with our data, we tried to identify, we did a sequence analysis identifying patterns of career progression in our sample. And our research showed us, first of all, good news. As you can see, group 1 and group 2, almost 80% of our sample were in a pretty stable career progression. These people were employed throughout the 7 waves, very little change even in their actual job. And so this is a good news. Stability is still the norm in Switzerland, maybe in other labor markets also. Bad news is when we try to predict membership in these groups. And I don't know if you can guess what distinguishes group 1, those who are stable in their career progression, but they work part-time, from those who work full-time in a stable career progression. Can anyone guess? Yes, please? Gender. It's not surprising, this nasty old gender gap. This is all things being equal. We controlled for skill and education level, and we even controlled for family situation. So that means that 70% of the men in the blue group, group 2, had small children and families to tend to. So this reminds us that, at least in Switzerland, women are more at risk of underemployment. They have to pay the price of the lack of policies, parental policies and supports, and that men do not have really to choose between family and career. And then we found 2 other groups. The group we're interested in, the resilient group here. Here we had people, we called it the resilient group. They started with some difficulties. First 2 years were a little bit difficult with high levels of unemployment or part-time activity, and then they kind of got back into tracks and retrieved stable employment. And here we had younger workers, higher levels of qualification, and some psychosocial resources. That means these people were more adaptable. They were curious, concerned by their career planification, they engaged in activities. And I think this is the good news, because I believe that you represent well this third group. And then we had the vulnerable group I was talking to you about. Here we had overrepresentation of women, lower qualification, and lower psychological or psychosocial resources. Let's move on. What can I tell you about these psychosocial resources? I'm taking too much time. I'll accelerate, sorry. Okay, a lot of conceptualizations of these resources in terms of skills, in terms of knowledge, in terms of resources or dispositions, personality traits. What I can tell you is that almost all of these models, conceptualizations of these resources, show us that there are at least four domains of career-related tasks that you will have to address. First domain, of course, goal formulation. This is the phase when you try to increase your knowledge of yourself, introspect, self-exploration, try to understand the environment, the demands, the opportunities, the trends, and then try to find the fit. So make the choice by saying, okay, the best option for me given my characteristics is this, this, and this. And then second phase, before acting, before implementing your choice, we think that the phase of preparation, that is anticipating possible setbacks, obstacles, developing your strategies, finding strategies to overcome, preparing this action, developing your social support is an important phase. And then comes implementation. That's where you go to meet the employers, you apply for jobs, you send out applications, you go hopefully to job interviews. And skills here are usually skills that turn around efficiently communicating who you are, your qualities, your motivations, a little bit of coping with the stress involved here in order to get the job. And then fourth domain, we think that in the perspective of lifelong development of careers, the fact that you're never sure what other transitions are to come, even when you have a first position, stability in your employment, it's always useful to have this ongoing monitoring of your career progression. What have I done up to here? How satisfied am I with my career progression up to here? What can I do? What do I want to do in the future? Or what obstacles or problems I could encounter and prepare for them? Excuse me. So, don't have the pretension to give you advice. I will make some recommendation on what you can do. And here, again, two sides of the coin. Side one, maybe be realistic enough. Number one, reflect on your key characteristics. Go beyond professional interests. This is the most superficial part of your work interests. Reflect on your values, your life goals, your community, your goals and projects in life in general, but also explore the environment. Think about the expectations of others, take into account, and try to fit in. So a little bit of compromising is necessary here, of course. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. Keep confidence, be confident in who you are, your resources and aspirations, yet remain a little bit anxious. Things can go sideways. You should engage in exploration, broaden your options, your views, and be curious about what's going on. And then deliberate and consult. Career decision-making, career planification is not an individual task. You need to recognize the influence and support of significant others, identify role models, mentors, people that can help and support in your social network. Side two, don't be over-realistic. Remain idealistic. First, distinguish between employment and work. Employment is about material, contractual conditions of your job. Work is the content of your job, the results of your job, the professional missions and objectives. So do not sacrifice meaning and the sense of purpose for a high salary or a nice office. we know that people who are most satisfied with their careers are those who ask themselves how their work contributes to others than them, their bank account or their resume. So contributing to a greater good or society or your community, your team members is an ingredient for a meaningfulness at work. 2, cultivate critical consciousness. I talked about this gender gap. Sometimes I present the gender gap and people are like, yeah, we know about it. I would like to remain angry and don't find this is normal. Do not settle for structural barriers or discrimination. Don't engage in self-blame only, and try to reject the inequalities and stay angry. By inequalities, I'm talking about inequalities that you experience, but also those that you witness in your organization, because living in an unjust world is just as bad for your health and well-being than experiencing. And then number 3, cooperate at least as much as you compete. Competition is not the only or the best way to succeed. Share your ideas, your strategies with your peers to try to find a sense of connectedness, to have social support, and don't keep things to yourself, seeing this as a race. And of course, stay creative. Don't let the rain ruin your journey or your day. And thank you for your attention.